Hey, welcome to More Than a Refresh, the T3D sessions. We are once again with one of our command prompt team members, and we are discussing what, James?
Today we're talking about mostly storage in AWS and possibly into backups if we get that far. But
Okay, hit me.
right, so AWS in general has kind of sailed in the cloud world. There's a couple paradigms. There's one where everything is made simple and you don't get much options. AWS is the opposite. They give you more options than you could possibly understand most of the time. So just looking at one area of storage, which is something we run across a lot with configuring and tuning and everything, that there's primarily two areas. There's the EBS storage for your EC2 instances and such, and then you have S3 for everything else, apparently.
Well, no, I mean, they offer NVMe drives, and they offer, what is it, Glacier, I think is what they call it.
Yep. Well, Glacier falls in as like a tier of S3 for your data that you don't necessarily ever need to access again, or hopefully, or rarely. And that's one of the areas where you have these options, and sometimes people coming into it don't always know what to pick or what's going to work best for them. And Amazon does have that great price calculator tool, which is very useful to help you figure it out. Although a few areas gets a little bit complicated, but for the most part, it works pretty well. And that's one area that, as long as you understand the gotchas of if I stick something in Glacier, yes, cheap. But if I ever try to retrieve it, then you need to know that I'm going to get hit with a penalty for that, or it'll cost you. Which, of course, is the whole point, that if you want to keep a backup of a database for 7 years, you're probably never actually going to restore it. It's just there for compliance or something like that.
Yeah, I was going to say that's what it's there for, is compliance.
Yeah. So it's not like you're going to be pulling it repeatedly.
But you're going to pay that price no matter what services, right? Because you've got your egress charges and your per byte or whatever charges from EBS or S3 or whatever.
Yep. Yeah. It's just that you're with normal S3, you're also billed beyond just the egress and ingress. What you get paid for, what you pay for there. You also get charged for how long this data exists, and that's the one where 7 years, if it's in standard S3 or Glacier or the deep freeze, whatever they call it now, thing, the data is the data. It's going to remain there the whole time. And as long as you don't need it, there's no point leaving it in the standard. If you do need to access it, there's no point putting it in Glacier. So knowing the different implications of each storage tier are kind of important. And then there's I think it's a relatively newer one they have, where it's the intelligent storage, where it sort of decides on its own what goes where. And then the pricing is all completely different for that one.
Oh, I don't like that at all.
Yeah, automation's great, isn't it? But the pricing is different there. So instead, it does bill you different by storage tier, but moving between tiers, if I remember right, doesn't cost you anything. So it sort of decides no one's touched this for 2 years, it's going into deep freeze. And if it has to pull it out, there's going to be a time hit, but you're not going to get necessarily that bill for pulling from there. So it's sort of I'm still a little iffy on it.
So to be clear, though, we're talking about from like an S3 to a Glacier or S3 to a deep freeze. We're not talking about EBS volumes.
Right. So, the EBS side, there isn't anything like a Glacier type thing. You don't have I rarely access this. Instead there, it's more of the how much you access it and how quickly it needs to be accessed and what latency you expect. So,
well, that's something a lot of people don't understand, right? Is that you can have fast drives, fast EBS volumes, but that doesn't mean your instance can access them as quickly as they can go. Because Amazon, it's good business. It's kind of in my opinion, a sneaky way to go about it. But I know why they do it. I don't think it's to be sneaky. It's to do exactly what you said, which is to give you every customizable option possible. But you can, if you're paying $40 a month for your instance and $500 a month for your storage, you're not getting the most out of your storage because your instance can't push it.
Most likely. And that's where, like, for several of our clients, we're helping them take data from like enormous databases that they don't necessarily need to be able to access them quickly or necessarily through Postgres, and archive that data over to S3. They still need to keep the data, but it doesn't necessarily need to live on the expensive live storage that's there. And Amazon has other tools too for querying data directly from S3 in certain formats and stuff. So if your application side can handle that, you can save a lot in that regard.
But wouldn't that be the most extreme case? I mean, wouldn't it make more sense to have like a secondary EBS volume that's running spinning disks or, non-persistent disks or something like that you can use table spaces with? That's
true. You can go that way as long as you're fine with the latency that you're going to get from it. And you got to be careful, like in Postgres in particular, if you're using table spaces, understand that if your query suddenly touches that table or an index that's sitting on magnetic disks, you could have a big hit to your query time. Because if it has to go to a scale of that.
Than S3.
Well, that's true. But then if it's an S3, you're not hitting it with Postgres anyway. So
I have an extension that would disagree with that, but I understand your point.
So most people wouldn't be.
Yeah, it's granted. All right, so we've got one of the problem. The opportunities within Amazon are basically that if we're not paying attention to our storage configuration, you very much are not optimizing your storage configuration. And if you are not optimizing your storage configuration, you are swiping, figuratively, that Amex card a lot.
Yep. And that's one place where I think the cloud in general makes it very easy to accidentally rack up a huge bill. That, if I have my own hardware, I'm not going to accidentally buy 50 servers. But if you have auto-scaling enabled, you could very accidentally provision 50 servers.
It's actually one of the things I like about the command prompt, as you know, but for those that don't, we're on Google, not because Amazon's bad or anything. It's just that because we're a bunch of open source geeks, Google thinks like we think. And one of the things I do like about the Google console is that if you log in, and you obviously have to evaluate it, but it'll tell you point blank, you don't need to spend this much money. You could save $100 a month, or dude, what are you doing? You need to upsize this thing. And of course you have to evaluate it. You have to do your diligence. You can't just trust it because it doesn't know your workload as much as you do, but it is something I enjoy about the Google services.
Yeah. So, I don't remember if I've seen I think Amazon has some sort of recommendation type thing too.
I'm sure they do.
But yeah.
I just have the advantage of paying you so I don't have to log into Amazon. Okay, so we've got just a little bit more time left. What's another gotcha you'd like to share?
Well, on that end of EBS and actually a little bit S3, is the concept of backups and snapshots. So in AWS, there isn't a whole lot of difference between the concepts, if any, but they do have like a separate tool that they call backups, but it basically uses snapshots in S3. But coming from previous existence in a world with VMware, the idea of a snapshot is a little bit different in AWS. And that was a big stumbling point for me coming in. I mean, I remember like the first time taking a snapshot of a volume, thinking that we've stepped back to the 1800s in photography. And like, why is a snapshot going to take 3 hours to complete? Do I have to hold still? But in reality, the snapshot itself is instantaneous, but then it does this background copy into S3. So again, comparing to previous world where the storage was all on NetApp filers, you could take 50 snapshots and your footprint doesn't change, because it's all shared storage, just copy on write. So you could split it off, but for the most part, why would you? If you want like 15 clones of a database to play with. I don't want to, double the storage, quadruple it, multiple.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's what copy on write's great for.
Yeah, exactly. And there is definitely benefit to having that separation where it's saying this is not actually the same live bits sitting on a disk. Because then that protects you. Because if you have 15 instances all sharing the same actual storage and that disk dies or that enclosure blows up, whatever, they're all down.
Right.
But the nice thing about AWS, they do build in a lot of redundancy in the services. But there are some areas where it kind of disappears. So like if you take a snapshot of your EC2 instance, that snapshot is bound to the same availability zone as the instance. You can copy it to another one. You can copy it to another region, but in and of itself, it's stuck there. So if you are really concerned about an entire city disappearing from the map where your data is, then you need to make sure that these just snapshot copies aren't adequate, that they're not stuck anywhere else. But also if you wanted to bring up a copy somewhere else as a failover type thing, you have to build in that time for it to finish making the snapshot, copy it to another area, and then it's available to be brought up again. So,
well, I would argue that should be your standard operating procedure, right? You should never have the only copy of your business in the same availability zone or region as all your compute, right? That's just bad business.
Yep, and you can take that to even a further level that I'd say you shouldn't have all of your data in a single account or organization in Amazon speak. Because
that's going to have to be for another day because we're out of time. That is something similar that we talked to Greg about in the previous episode, though.
Oh, nice.
Hey, everybody. This has been More Than a Refresh T3D Sessions. James, thank you so much.
Glad to be here. Thank you.